Welcome to the Arts to Hearts podcast, a show where we take a peek into the hearts and lives of our favorite artists. From running a creative business and practice to mindset, we talk about everything that goes behind into making a life and a career that you adore as an artist. Think of this as your happy hour with your favorite artist in your studio. Hear them share the messy and the wonderful side of creating and living a creative, heartfelt life within and outside our studios. As you tune in, be ready to be inspired and encouraged. I'm your host, Charuka Arora, an artist, designer, entrepreneur, and founder of Arts to Hearts project. Thank you so much for being here. Let's jump right in. Hey, you guys, welcome back to the Arts to Hearts podcast. This is your host, Charuka Arora. If you're tuning in for the first time, a big welcome. And if you're a regular listener, thank you so much for joining in again. I am doing a solo episode after a really long time, but I think I felt really called for this one. But before we get into the episode, I just wanted to check in with you and see how are you doing. I know it's been long and I haven't been able to show up as much as I would like, but to be completely honest right now, I'm just not very comfortable with being too much online, and I think I just am still trying to protect myself and to be in the shell. And I think honestly, it wasn't as easy, and it's still not easy, I would say. I had a lot of inhibitions because, in a time that we live, and especially when you have your work online and all of those things, and when you feel that you do not want to spend so much of time online, I was taken aback. I felt like, if I wouldn't be there, I will be lost. My business would be lost. How I've built Arts to Hearts or even my own practice online, I would put everything in jeopardy. But I think at the end of the day, I realized that if I didn't feel safe enough, if I didn't feel fulfilled enough, if I didn't feel satisfied enough, none of these things would matter. But I'm still so grateful for all the conversations that I keep having with my people, if it's just not on Instagram post, instead privately on my messages. So yeah, if you want to talk to me, if you want to reach out to me, feel free to drop me a message and I'll get back to you there. I just wanted to say that I am just taking this time and I really hope that I can come out of it when the time is right. How long will that take? I don't know. But I am trying, and I think that's all that matters. I think this is what my heart wants right now, and I'm just going to give myself that time. Okay, now why I wanted to do this episode. In the past decade of working, I think this is one of the most fundamental topics that I think play a very vital role in where I am and where I would go. In the beginning, when I started out, I did not really have a lot of creative people around me. At least I wouldn't say creative, but let's say people in creative business. And I would find myself very alone and confused, like I've said ample of times. But I think this confusion and this aloofness was also because I couldn't relate to a lot of things. And what I felt, a lot of people did not relate to that. And that made me more confused. But thanks to time and experience that teaches you everything. The past decade has taught me a lot of things that work for me and that don't work for me, and which is fine. Not one thing that works for one person works for everyone. So I just thought I would share with you on a few tips on what has worked for me as a creative entrepreneur, as an artist, as a designer, and as a person who just wants to live, who just doesn't want to have a creative career but also wants to live a creative life. All of these points are something that I'm sharing by my own experience in life, on how I have gone through things and how I look at them now. So, let's say I'm someone who likes to have a lot of structure, but also a lot of fluidity in my work and in my life. I like to follow patterns, but I get extremely bored and uninspired by anything that's too rigid, anything that's too fixed, anything that's too regular. But to keep myself productive and in check, I I feel it's essential for me to have a pattern because I have commitments to make, I have projects to finish, and I have to show up for things on time as I commit. And the only way for me to do that is to have a structure in place, and it also makes it easier for me to work alongside more people. That is actually a tricky one. Yeah. So when I first actually started to like when I started my creative career, I was like, I really struggled with working with people. And I think this is one of the most like points that a lot of us struggle with. When I started my career, here are a few points that I have figured for myself and I thought I will share with you so that maybe these can help you figure out what kind of structure, what kind of a creative are you, what kind of structure works for you, what kind of fluidity works for you, and how can you use your time that really keeps you creative and inspired. I hope this helps you. Let's get into it. Number one, people. So when I first joined when I first started working, I realized that I did not I just I felt extremely overwhelmed when I was doing a job, and I felt I was extremely overwhelmed with so many people surrounding me and to coordinate with too many people. I think at one point I felt it was good, but when it stretched over a time like it would in a job, I felt extremely overwhelmed, suffocated, and restricted. Over the years, I realized that for me, working with too many people for far too long is something that will never work. I am someone who likes to work with people in short intervals, but also have my alone time. And I think that was one of the reasons that made me take the call of working independently, because that way I get to choose with who I get to work, how I get to work, and how long I want to work. So yeah, if you're someone who's also struggling with finding their way out on how they interact with people, I think that it doesn't have to be one way. You just don't have to work with yourself, or you just don't have to work with too many people always. You can always find a way that works for you, a routine that works for you, a job that works for you, a business that works for you. For me, being an artist was so isolating sometimes because I it was lonely, and I think I lacked a lot of conversations. And at that point, I knew I really, really wanted to have a community that keeps me inspired and will give me that sense of motivation and inspiration and community. So I started Arts to Hearts. I think that was one of the biggest reasons that I started Arts to Hearts, because I knew I wanted to have conversations with people, but I also knew I did not want to be around people all the time. So doing a podcast was one of the most convenient ways because I get to talk to people, which I get to talk to women artists, and I think that is one of the most comfortable zones for me that always keeps me inspired to have creative conversations with women who are as ambitious. So yeah, so I created Arts to Hearts because I was like, I wanted to add that conversation part to my life within the creative work, and I did that, and I'm extremely happy with that because with with so many things that are still happening at Arts to Hearts, it's just not a podcast anymore. It's not just a platform anymore, and I don't even know. I have lots of ideas, but let's say there's a lot to still unpack with how Arts to Hearts will turn and what it will turn into. Another point: working horizontal and working vertical. Okay, hear me out what I'm trying to say. Another thing that I learned in my journey was I was a person who would always explore my options, I would just couldn't work in one single direction. I was someone who would always work in different sections and then pick one and then get into it. And then I would still look around options, and then I'm never someone who would just work in one direction. But I'm also someone who likes to work hyper focused. Let me explain what I just said. By that I mean, I as an artist, I just did not want to just create art. I wanted to be a part of the ecosystem of this industry and contribute more than just with making. I wanted to have conversations. I wanted to be a part of something more that I was willing to be a part of and I knew I could contribute. But I still wanted to have all of these within the creative art industry. What I'm trying to say is that it's okay to feel you're expanding in different directions, but it's also important for me to know that all of those initiatives and all of those directions are going in one direction. So, yeah, I figured that I am not someone who would feel convenient and happy and fulfilled with some only doing one thing. I like to do multiple things at one point. But what I also like is all of those things are interconnected and are working together in one direction towards something. So yeah, this is something again I figured while working all these years, and I realized, okay, this is I can never do one project at a time. Maybe I can do two projects that are aligned and that are just uplifting each other, and it keeps me inspired. Another thing I think was the balance between creating and consuming. For me, it's also equally important to consume something as much as it is to create something. I'm not someone who would like to be in my studio 24/7. Instead, I'm also someone who, okay, let me put this together again. Okay, I am someone who loves to be in my studio, but I'm not someone who would love to be in my studio 24/7. I want to go out, I want to see the world, I want to travel, I want to do all of those things that are that are that have nothing to do with my work, and just not work, especially like the creative work. I also I think over the decade, it's just not the creative work that I've done, but the business that I've learned has been instrumental. It's been instrumental for me, and that was because I was willing to try something beyond my comfort zone. And it took me years to even learn what I know today. And I'm sure there's a huge way for me to go forward. But I think that only happened because I was willing to expand my horizon when it came to creating and looking what creating meant. For me, it wasn't just the creative work, but it was also that how do you create a business, marketing, and content, and all of those things that help me switch and see creativity in another angle. And it just helps me sometimes if I feel too exhausted, and if I feel not being called towards my work or art. I know I have these other creative endeavors or business endeavors that make me feel inspired. I mean, um, that is something that really really works for me. Even in my routine, in a week, there's so many things that I do, and sometimes it does get a lot of overwhelming, but most of the time it works for me. And again, I think also understanding that what worked for me maybe a year, 2 year, or 3 years ago may not work for me now. So I keep asking myself that if this is something that I still want to do, is this something that still serves me, is this something that really makes me fulfilled? If the answer is yes, I move forward. If the answer is no, I reevaluate with what I really really want. And as simple as this sounds when I'm saying, believe me, it's not. So yeah, I struggle a lot with all of these things, but I think today, just talking about it and looking back on an aerial view, I realized that how much these patterns have appeared in the past decade. The next point that I want to talk about is about having structured days versus non structured days. I am someone who loves to be like instinctive. I am a very instinctive person. I'm someone who works with instincts, and I think that really is what keeps me inspired. But I also know to elevate my quality of work, especially when it comes to the podcast or when it comes to Arts to Hearts or my clients or my consultations. I know that I need to have I mean, my creative instincts and the impromptuness of how I perceive things really help me, but having a structure also does. So, what really helps me is if I know what I'm going into in advance. What I usually do is I would wake up and I'll do my routines, and let's say I work out in the morning, then I really need to journal. And I think even though I'm not able to do it every day, I try to do it almost every day, and that really keeps me in check. And the next thing after that I do is I create a calendar, a calendar for myself. And that is something that really helps me throughout the day. I try to block my times, I try to list things that I need to do and tasks I need to maybe delegate to my team. Or even if I have to make art, I would just write it. By writing, I always don't mean that I have to do all of that. I think with me, I am someone who would write all of those things down, and then I would pick a couple, three, four, five, whatever fits my day, and I would make sure that I can achieve them. With that, it keeps me directional. It When I start another day, I know what I've done and what is pending, so I can finish that in another day. And it still gives me that freedom that um, I don't really define with what I'm going to do in that hour, but I know that this I with my creative work, I actually don't really define with what I want to do with that creative time. But with, let's say, consultations with, let's say, Arts to Hearts, with my other business projects, I mostly know what want to get done, because that's how I keep that structure. But another thing I really want to share quickly is that um, this is again how it works for me. May work completely different for you, and that's okay, because we're all unique. We have different expectations, um, different ways of working, and we just need to find and embrace what really works for us. So I'm sharing these so that if you're feeling doubtful about things that just you don't see someone else doing, and you feel like maybe that's something how you really want to do, just go for it, try it, give it a go, and see if it works for you or not. Another thing, like, let's say for the past couple of weeks, I would get up every day 5 in the morning. I would do my workout, then my journal, then my routine, my to-dos. And I felt like a couple of weeks into it, I realized that I was extremely exhausted. My days were really structured. I was getting everything that I wanted to get. But I think 2 3 weeks into it, I started getting really drained out, because it felt quite organized for me. Sometimes I love my chaos, honestly. I'm generally a chaotic person, but I think I've learned over the years that how I can actually organize my mess. So when I felt extremely drained, and I think mostly that drain was because I was having I was having very similar days. I would get up in the morning, do some me I would get up in the morning, do my workout, then go my journal, then my to-dos, then my meetings, then my studio, then I come back, and I started feeling that block, and I realized that it was getting too overwhelming for me, and I needed that fluidity in my time. And for, let's say, this week, I have no routine. I am taking some space, and I'm just giving myself the time to feel that freeness. But even then, just trying to get done what needs to be done. Again, this is how it just works for me. I like to have patterns, but I like to break them so that I can reinvent them, or I don't feel forced to follow them. I follow because it helps me, not because I am meant to follow something. Another thing I think I want to talk about is working too isolated for too long. I know something, if I'm alone for too long, it is overwhelming for me. And if I am surrounded by people all the time, that's also overwhelming for me. So I also plan my days in a way that either I would have, let's say, 3 days in a week where I have most of my meetings, most of my calls, and let's say 3 days in a week where I'm mostly in my studio, or I'm alone working, getting things done that are that can be done just by myself, and I don't want to have anyone else alongside. Or I would maybe split my days in a time in a way that I can have hours that work for me great, for that are hours only for me in my studio or anywhere, but a few hours that are gone into meetings and conversations. And it's not like because I have to have these meetings and conversations, it's because I really enjoy them. Because when I get to meet my team and have these conversations for arts to arts, I feel that excitement, and I feel I always come out with far more ideas when I discuss with them, and we do far more exciting things. And it just feels great to have someone to share that journey with. But equally, I feel I need to have that alone time, the alone ownership of what I'm creating, and that creative process without any interruptions. So yeah, a lot of things that I do here are just only mine. When I get on the mic, it's just me, nobody else. Or when I'm in the studio, it's just me, nobody else. So yeah, I think setting boundaries with where you want to include, what you want and what you don't want. And you wouldn't find your answers in just one go. It takes forever. And honestly, even if you find your answer, there's no guarantee that it's going to work forever. It just works when you know when it works, and you know when it stops working. A lot of things over the years I realized that I thought always worked for me, I realized that are no longer serving me, and I need to let them go so that I can find something that I really like, or that really helps me. So yeah, I think these are a few things that really help me keep inspired and motivated and get a lot of things done. Especially, I think, like, another thing that I want to talk about is like having a mix. I am someone who loves to add different projects in my plate, and who loves to, sometimes I'm someone who would work aggressively. I would just, get go, and I would get things done. But then some days I'm just like, I want to take things slow. I want to be a slow learner, slow mover, slow doer, everything. But some days I'm just fired up, and um I want to get all of those things done. I want to achieve those goals. I want to have those meetings. I want to create those projects. And I think with more and more time passing, I'm realizing when I feel what, and what triggers what. You know what I mean? I mean, I know that winters are great for me. I know that I used to be like a night owl, but today work but today waking up in the morning is one of the most important things for me, because it just gives me the time that I need to myself, and it just keeps me motivated. So yeah, I think I just wanted to say that you figure out what you want. What works for me may work for you, and I think that's entirely the point. I recorded this episode because I knew that in the beginning I saw people doing only linear things. I saw people doing only one job, one project, one interest, one kind of routine, and I was like, I felt like I felt like I was someone who would never stick to one thing. But I realized that that's not true. I'm just someone who evolves, and who understands that I am an evolving person, and I am not someone who would want to be contained within a limit that's been set by someone else, and I can always expand those limits. So yeah, I remember when I, a lot of people still don't understand a lot of things that I do, which is completely fine. But I know that everything that I do really keeps me inspired. It fills my soul, and it makes me really happy. And today, when I see that it's become common where people are doing multiple projects, they don't have one stable jobs, and it's okay. So yeah, if you feel that anyway, you feel that you're alone, if you're feeling you're a misfit, unfit, know that I'm there with you. There are so many things and places I feel I'm not fit yet, or I am not able to put myself into them. But I think I've gained the confidence that I'm going to figure that out for myself now or sometime later. So I just want to tell you that even if you are there with me, let's just know that we'll figure it out. We'll know what works for us and we'll go for that. I just wanted to say a big thank you, guys. Thank you so much for sticking for this long. I think this is the longest solo episode I've done. But again, like I said, this is something that I really felt called for. And I really wanted to share so that even if it helps one of you, two of you, it just makes my day. But yeah, I really want to say if this episode resonated with you, just reach out to me. Let me know because sometimes, you know, working online and working behind these screens, it it's hard to know what's happening on the other side. I mean, I get to do this wonderful podcast, Arts to Hearts, my own work. All of these things feels amazing. But I want to listen what you feel about this. I want to know who you are. I want to know who's listening to these episodes. I just don't want them to be numbers. So if you're a listener, please drop me a review anywhere that you like or drop me a DM. But let's say I would still prefer a review because, or maybe let's say I would prefer both because a review really helps the show get more visibility, more listeners. But yeah, a DM would make me, I mean, would really help me connect with you better. So yeah, I would really love to know more about what you think, what's helping, how you would want me, how what more can I do for you? If the podcast is something that's really keeping you engaged, or do you want me to improve somewhere, or just anything? I think I would love to know what you think about the podcast, what I can do more. If there's anything you would want, any guests that you want me to invite, and I'll try to make that possible. So yeah, also don't forget, if you are a regular listener, even if you're coming for the first time, please, I request you if you can leave us a review because it's really hard to really grow a podcast, and it is a it's a passion project I love, and I think I would still keep investing my time, money, everything. But I just want to make sure that I put an effort to make sure that this all of this reaches far more people than it is every day. So yeah, your review will make that happen, and I hope I will see you soon again. But we have a few more very exciting interviews still lined up. So yeah, until I feel called for another and a half an hour long conversation to myself and you, of course, I'll come back. So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for staying. I look forward. Just DM me when you're listening this, or just tag me in your stories, or just leave us a review. Just let me know who you are, what you're doing, what do you think about it, and I will be so grateful for your support. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great day. I'm sending you lots of love. Big hug, Charuka. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. You can find all the details and links mentioned in the show notes of this episode available on www.arts2heartsproject.com. And if you like this episode, please don't forget to tag us in your stories and leave us a review here on iTunes or any of your favorite platforms. It really helps us to keep the show going. Thank you so much. I'm sending you lots of love and I can't wait to be back here soon again. Bye.